I'm Adrian, the Cruise and Travel Guy. Was this past week a complete disaster for cruising in Australia, or did it highlight how emergencies and chaos can be better handled by both passengers and cruise lines? From travel insurance mistakes to cruise lines dropping the ball, here's what we learned. When you're planning your next holiday, make sure to head to my website first, where you can search, compare, and book. Tropical Cyclone Alfred taunted with Australia for weeks before finally taking aim at southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. Storms of this magnitude occurring so far south are a rarity, so the impacts of this on the Australian cruise industry really were unprecedented. As Australia's second largest cruise hub, Brisbane plays host to many cruise ships, from the now defunct P&O Australia to Carnival Cruise Line, Princess Cruises and Royal Caribbean, among others. With summer cruising still in full swing, Brisbane Port saw consecutive cruise ship turnarounds impacted by Alfred's arrival. In many ways, it gave cruise lines an opportunity to put customer care and customer service above all else, and some dealt with that better than others. And believe me, there's also a lesson here that could save you thousands in the future. First and foremost, Tropical Cyclone Alfred created dynamic chaos. Chaos that had far-reaching implications, much more than any cruise holiday. But when it did come to travel, airlines were among the quickest to respond and did so with conviction. They provided impacted travelers with the option to cancel or change their flights without penalty, and their messaging around this was clear and concise. Cruise lines were much slower to act in this regard. Despite citywide shutdowns of public transportation, warnings of huge amounts of rainfall and cyclonic winds, cruise lines left booked travelers in the dark until the last minute. Their delays even prompted me to make a video last week calling them out for their lack of information and echoing your calls across Facebook for clarity about what was happening. It was obvious early on in the week that some of these cruises just wouldn't happen, yet a couple of cruise lines waited a whole lot longer than they should have to make that call, although some viewers didn't agree with my stance. During the past week, communications from cruise lines were at best broken and delayed, and at worst, non-existent. For better or worse, we live in a social media driven world, and across Facebook in particular, hundreds were seeking clarity about their upcoming cruises from Brisbane, for the most part because their priorities were suddenly elsewhere, concerned with protecting their homes and families. Throughout the past week, cruise lines often appeared to be on the back foot, reacting to information as it emerged. While this is understandable, decisions can only be made as facts come to light, there's also a responsibility to provide affected passengers or travelers with timely updates. In situations like this, where the impacts go beyond just someone's holiday, I think having information delivered quickly and accurately is crucial. For example, Maritime Safety Queensland announced that a significant swell event would impact the Port of Brisbane, and soon after, news broke that Cunard's Queen Anne would skip its scheduled call in Brisbane that same day, while Norwegian Cruise Line opted to cancel Norwegian Sun's stop in Brisbane on Wednesday, March 5th. Notably, neither ship was scheduled for a full-scale turnaround in Brisbane. On March 3rd, Carnival Cruise Line advised travel agents with clients booked on Carnival Luminosa's March 6th sailing not to proceed to the port until operational plans had been confirmed. Then, on Tuesday, March 4th, Carnival posted to its Facebook page that due to Tropical Cyclone Alfred, it was expected that the Port of Brisbane would be closed from Wednesday, March 5th through to the end of the week. At the same time, reports surfaced from passengers on board Carnival Luminosa that those with an urgent need to return to Australia were being offered the option to disembark in Noumea and fly home at their own expense. By the morning of Wednesday, March 5th, passengers booked onto Carnival Luminosa's March 6th cruise and Quantum of the Sea's March 7th cruise were still in the dark about what exactly was happening. This left many, especially those flying in from interstate, facing an impossible decision. Risk traveling to a city awaiting a cyclone, unsure whether their cruise would even depart, or remain home and cancel the cruise at their own expense. Fortunately, later that day, before noon, Carnival did confirm that its March 6th sailing was cancelled, and then Royal Caribbean later confirmed its Quantum of the Seas March 7th sailing was likewise cancelled. During this timeline of events especially, my own Facebook page became a central hub of information. Where cruise lines were obviously lagging behind was in clear and concise information, and I truly did my best to be this source. All that serves to highlight that cruise lines really needed to do better to be concise and clear about what exactly was transpiring. A more proactive and clear stream of communication that provided both guidance and confidence was needed, and in my opinion, that just didn't happen. Undoubtedly, those in the biggest panic over the past week were those without travel insurance. I continue to be shocked by the number of people that travel without it, although based on the amount of misinformation that exists out there in the world, especially on Facebook, I'm not exactly surprised. Firstly, and although Australia has bulk billed Medicare services available on land, these are not available on a cruise ship. All medical expenses incurred during a cruise, even on a domestic sailing, are the responsibility of the user. Depending on the circumstances, these can easily add up to be in the hundreds if not thousands, and let's not get started on the evacuation at sea cost. These are even more common than you might think. When it came to Tropical Cyclone Alfred, those with travel insurance had options earlier on to cancel their cruise when it became obvious that traveling to Brisbane was going to be a problem, particularly once governments began to issue advice that people shouldn't travel. While every policy is different and this is purely general advice, travel rearrangements or cancellations due to unforeseeable circumstances outside of your control are usually covered. Of course, all claims are subject to assessment. And while those with insurance could make the decision to cancel ahead of time, those without had no choice but to wait for their cruise line to make that call, and in some cases, as we saw, that was within 24 hours of departure. Thankfully, cruise lines and airlines did eventually come to the party, offering refunds or penalty-free travel changes, but thousands were left in limbo before these decisions were made. A couple of interesting points also emerged on Facebook over the past week, including when one Facebook user revealed that she was able to cancel her travel insurance policy within its cooling off period. She was able to get a full refund for the policy once she learned that her cruise had been cancelled and refunded in full by the cruise line. The other is to make sure that your period of insurance covers even the activities outside of the cruise itself. So things like flying to the port and pre-accommodation or post-accommodation and flights, basically anything that sees you leave your front door and then return to your front door should be covered by the date that you choose for your policy. To that end, travel insurance policies typically don't include cruise coverage, so this needs to be added at an additional cost. And of course, many credit cards offer complimentary travel insurance, and I have a feeling that some people forget about this. Depending on your bank or credit card provider, you might need to ring or call them to actually activate it. In some cases, you need to have paid a certain amount for that travel in order for it to be covered. It's up to you to investigate which applies to you and make sure you do what's required to activate it before your travels. When you book a cruise, you are agreeing to page after page of terms and conditions. These govern everything from what you can bring on board the ship to your behavior to any changes to itineraries and plans. These terms and conditions are readily available to view online, and they make for interesting reading. In general, cruise lines have the right to alter an itinerary on the fly based on prevailing conditions, and normally to protect the interests and safety of their guests. In fact, reading through the terms and conditions reveals that some cruise lines actually go above and beyond what they have to when it comes to providing passengers with refunds or onboard credits, basically monetary or tokenistic options that provide some sort of recourse when things do change, because in many cases they don't have to do that. No doubt this is to help preserve their public image. Either way though, the point is, cruise lines pretty much hold all the power, and you should go into any booking understanding that. The best way to protect yourself is to know what your consumer rights are. Be prepared for the cruise to deviate from its intended course with absolutely no compensation, and of course, have a comprehensive travel insurance policy. While terms and conditions that contradict Australian laws and in particular consumer laws can't be enforced, Fighting a multi-billion-dollar industry in court doesn't exactly sound cheap. For me, communications is at the very foundation of good business and good customer service, and in my opinion, both Carnival and Royal Caribbean this week fumbled the ball to some degree. I know not all of you will agree with that, but I won't be swayed. At the end of the day, Tropical Cyclone Alfred was a wake-up call for cruise lines and passengers alike. It exposed weakness in communication, highlighted why being proactive in crisis situations is so important, and yet again reinforced why travel insurance is an absolute necessity. In a sea of chaos, cruise lines had an opportunity to be clear and concise, and while some did, others left passengers scrambling for information at the last minute, hours before they were on their way to airports to meet flights, or about to hit rain-soaked highways to make their way up to a cruise that was never going to begin. For travelers, this situation reinforced a few crucial lessons. First, never assume cruise lines will communicate with urgency. Seek out reliable sources and stay informed. Second, read the fine print. Cruise line terms and conditions give them a lot of leeway, and knowing your rights can help you navigate unexpected changes. And finally, if you're still rolling the dice on traveling without insurance, this past week should serve as a harsh reality check, because when things go wrong, those without coverage are often left footing the bill. Hopefully, the cruise lines take this as an opportunity to improve their response strategies. But even if they don't, you're now hopefully better equipped to protect yourself the next time chaos strikes. So what do you think? Do you believe that cruise lines should have handled this differently? Do you think they did everything perfectly? Let me know in the comments. The next time you're ready to book a cruise or holiday, head to my website, thecruiseandtravelguide.com.au. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. I'm Adrian. Was this past week of cruising in Australia what? Or does it serve to highlight how passengers and cruise lines... I knew this is going to be very difficult. I'm Adrian, the Cruise and Travel Guy. Was the From travel insurance, chaos and problems... Oh, I feel like I was almost there. But it also highlighted an opportunity for people to make sure that they don't... What? And this was mostly in response to your thunderous demands for information on Facebook. What? Their delays even prompted me to make a video on... And of course, there is credit... While terms and conditions that contradict Australian law or consumer law can't be enforced... While terms and conditions that contradict Australian law and...